Good evening, everybody. It's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, October 10th. The regular meeting, a regular joint meeting of the Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency Technical Advisory Committee. That's Turlock Subbasin Groundwater Sustainability Agency Technical Advisory Committee. If you haven't done my normal gut check of who's here, we have a quorum for the Turlock GSA, so I'm calling us to order. Sarah, do you have?
We have a quorum for the ETS GSA, so we can call ourselves to order.
So we're doing this meeting in person, but obviously we have a Zoom option too. So welcome everybody here. Our normal practice is to introductions because we have a number of people. Let's start with introductions. Starting here on my right.
Jennifer Land, TID.
Michael Cook, I'm with Turlock Irrigation District and the chair of the West Turlock TAC.
Matt Beeman, Merced Irrigation District.
Dennis Suya, Felico Cortez Water District.
Len Mason, Formation Environmental.
Mike Tietza, coordinator for East Turlock Subbasin GSA.
Sarah Wolf, Eastside Water District and chair of ETS GSA TAC.
Lisa McBride, Merced County. Caitlin Haar, counsel for ETS GSA.
Christine McKinnon with Stanislaus County.
Miguel Alvarez, City Modesto.
Timothy Barahona, City Modesto.
Michael Clipper, Turlock Irrigation District and treasurer, West Turlock.
Curtis Juritzma, Hillmore County Water District.
Andrew Maldonado, Delhi County Water District.
Mike Pitcock, City Waterford, representing Hickman.
And Debbie Montalbano with Turlock Irrigation District.
Well, you're not obligated to do so. Anybody online would like to introduce themselves, they're very welcome to.
Sure. Hi, I'm Liz Elliott with Todd Groundwater.
Liz?
Arden Wells with Todd Groundwater.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Our first item on the agenda is public participation. This is the time set aside for members of the public to directly address facts regarding any item of interest within the subject matter jurisdiction of the technical advisory committee. You can speak now on any general item or wait until if a specific item comes up later on the agenda, you can address it at that time. So with that, do we have any public participation? Okay, seeing none in the room or online. The item number 4, announcements. I'd just like to say that we have a new point of contact from the Department of Water Resources for Sigma Subbasin. His name is Dimitri Lee. I don't think Dimitri's on. Yeah. Doesn't look like it. No. Anyway, if you see that name and emails and everything else, we look forward to working with Dimitri, and we'll keep an eye out for him. All right, moving on to item number 5. Meeting minutes. We have the minutes of the regular August 8th joint meeting of the West Turlock and East Turlock Technical Advisory Committees. Those minutes were sent around earlier this week. But this time, I would ask whether anybody from the West Turlock Subbasin would like to make a motion to move to approve the minutes.
So moved.
Second. Motion from Curtis, a second from Leandro. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes stand approved. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you. We have the same set of minutes that need to be approved from East Turlock. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Matt. A second. Lacey, thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Moving on to item number 6, budget update. It's been an overview of revenues and expenditures for the West Turlock Subbasin, East Turlock Subbasin, and the joint accounts. So over to you, Michael Clipper.
Yes, for the West Turlock Subbasin account, as of October 1st, we had $1,148,449.77. I believe almost all invoices have been paid. I need to double check that, but we've received a lot of the things and have been, and this is reflecting most of those deposits, if not all. Then for the basin account, as of October 1st, we had $840,851.54. Any questions?
Any questions for Michael? Thank you, Michael. Sarah, do you have something for East Turlock?
I do. As of the end of September for ETS GSA, we had cash on hand of $496,755.56. That's our update.
Any questions for Sarah? Okay, thanks, everybody. I probably need to slow down because Perry, who's item number 8, he's still driving, so he should be here soon. But anyway, he's not in the room yet. Yeah, we could move on to item number 7, letter of support. 7A is me. This is to consider recommending the West Turlock Subbasin TAC provide a letter of support to the Bureau of Reclamation for Turlock Irrigation District's Water Smart Grant for the lateral 5.5, 5.5 regulating reservoir. So as you know, TID has a gravity-fed irrigation system. We release water from Turlock Lake every day during the irrigation season to customers who've made previous orders. Sometimes obviously the ordering goes out of whack where farmers can't take the water all day, they have a problem, whatever else. In those cases, excess water gets spilled to the river, or in some instances in our lower part of our system where we start running out of surface water, we pump in groundwater. What a regulating reservoir allows us to do is kind of a bank water lower down the system. So when we have excess supply that needs, we can park it in there, release it at a later date. And then it also allows us to reduce the amount of pumping we have to do downstream. So there's a number of positive potential benefits to the aquifer. Again, reduce pumping, maximizing the use of surface water supplies, using our surface water supplies if possible, reducing spills. And then obviously if we're maximizing the use of surface water, that helps with groundwater recharge. And the lateral 5.5 regulating reservoir will also allow us to integrate potentially recycled water from the city of Turlock, which TID has access to about 2,000 acres. I think that's actually a project in the GSP, if I'm not mistaken, Debbie, right? So from TID's perspective, we feel it checks a number of boxes for the groundwater basin and for Sigma. So to our AGM Water Resources asked us to get a letter of support. Obviously, it's a slight conflict for me, so I think the letter should come from Miguel. He's the vice chair. So when that should get signed, Miguel, I'll ask you to sign that letter of support. If it gets approved by the TAC today, that's okay with you?
That's fine.
Okay, sounds good. So any questions for me regarding the project and the letter of support the TID is requesting? Okay, that's true. So this is a letter of support from the West Turlock TAC. Some of you as individual public water agencies have actually written letters of support to the TID. They were solicited separately. So again, thank you for helping us with this project. This will be the 3rd regulating reservoir for Turlock Irrigation District, and we're seeing significant savings on our surface water supplies. All right, any questions for me? This is for West Turlock folks only because this is located in the West Turlock Subbasin, or it's GSA.
You need a motion on that, Michael?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Second.
Second from Leandro. Any further discussion? West Turlock, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful, motion stands approved. Okay, that takes us to item 7B. Debbie, consider recommending the Turlock Subbasin GSA Technical Advisory Committee, so both of us provide a letter of support to the state for Sigma related funding. So Debbie, over to you.
Thank you. So there is a bond that is being considered for the state for climate change, and there have been several, I think, subbasins that have submitted comment letters to the governor as well as the state legislature to encourage funding within that bond measure for Sigma related items. And so there was a draft that was circulated from some of the other subbasins that we took and made some minor changes to make it more specific to our subbasin. And that would include some language to talk about actually perhaps having the legislature and the governor reinstate the $60 million that they took out of the budget in the May revise to add it back into the budget in January, and perhaps even allow for the funding for the next available projects within the last grant to be funded, because that might be helpful for us. So we added that type of language to the letter that had been circulated and sent in by some of the other subbasins. So the idea here is to support Sigma funding at the state level. Again, there isn't any additional funding right now out there, and so the idea is to get funding from this new bond measure, and perhaps from the state budget as well. So that would be the ask, is to enable a letter to be sent in from West Turlock and perhaps East Turlock. It could be a joint letter that would be sent in to the governor and the legislature and the bond measure authors to encourage a write-in for Sigma. So any questions or thoughts with respect to that?
Questions for Debbie? I know maybe Sarah, Lacey, or Matt, other GSA subbasins have been doing this similar type of letter writing campaign throughout our part of the valley. So.
From our perspective, Chilla has done a similar letter. I don't know about Merced. No, not yet. But I think a joint letter would be preferable if possible. So it's from the whole subbasin, be our preference.
Good. Yep. Maybe eventually Debbie share this with like Modesto folks, with the Delta Mendoza folks, and everybody else. Unless you just sign on to the letter, but let them know what we're doing. If they want to do their own, I think the more the merrier.
And I believe others have been reached out to, but I will.
Okay.
I believe Kern, or I believe it was Kern that had sent a letter already. So yeah, I think the more basins that send letters would be very helpful.
I agree.
Right, any other questions about that item? So we have an action here for the West Turlock TAC. Authorize the West Turlock GSA TAC to provide a letter of support state Sigma related funding. Do you want to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you. I thought Pitcock was going to do it. I was convinced.
Second.
Second. Okay. Motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, approved by the West Turlock. Sarah?
Thank you. And yes, so as I stated, I think it would be nice if we did a joint letter with West Turlock. And so we would look for a motion to support from the TAC letter.
I'll move.
Thanks, Matt. Dennis, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you.
Okay, I'm still not seeing Perry. Okay, he's supposed to be here in person. So maybe we'll skip over 8 for now and wait for Perry's safe and speedy arrival. And moving on to item number 9, Sigma related update. It's our general annual update for members of the Technical Advisory Committee to discuss and provide updates on any Sigma related items. A couple of our standing items there too. Debbie, I'm going to hand over to you. Grants and GSP implementations.
Sure. I have an exhaustive list today, so hopefully it'll be long enough for Perry to arrive. I just wanted to remind everyone that we are still waiting for our GSP review to come in. DWR is still in the process of reviewing the 2022 GSPs. Their deadline is January of next year. They've been releasing determinations about quarterly. I heard, and I don't know if anyone else has heard anything else, but it might be sometime around October that the next release would be available. And then after that, December, January. So there's a significant number of GSPs still in the review process. So we will eagerly await hearing from them. But in all likelihood, it will be the GSAs will hear about the same time as the general public in some type of a public notification, likely. So I don't expect to hear anything else unless others have any other information, but that's my understanding. Okay. Other things to report. We are I've been working with the consultant team to develop a scope of work for the next annual report, and that will be due at the end of March. Actually, April 1st is the final date, but so we're developing a scope of work, and I hope to bring that to the tax for approval next month, and then begin working on that. The agencies should know what we provided in the past, and we'd be looking for the same information this year around. So if you have that information, you could start compiling it in the same format. And if you want what you guys sent in last year, let me know, and I will get that to you so you can kind of begin that process. The idea is to have the data to the consultant team by the end of November, beginning of December, so that they can get started on the modeling. And water level monitoring, an analysis. Todd Groundwater is nearly done with their analysis of the fall 2022 and spring 2023 measurements. So that information will be then shared with the group, and it's designed to fold into the annual report that I just spoke of. And we are planning on doing the fall 2023 measurements during the first 2 weeks of November. So I'm working with Todd and others to kind of figure out the best approach on how to kind of pull that information together and share it with the tax. And it might be from a meeting perspective that it makes the most sense to wait on the fall 2020 and the spring 2023 measurements and working through that data with the tax after we've already kind of pulled together the fall 2023 measurements, and kind of do all three measurements all at once to the group. But my plan is to bring that as well as the scope of work for the fall 2023 measurement analysis to the tax next month. So that's a concept anyway. I'm trying to minimize the number of meetings and what have you, and manage costs in that way. So that was the concept for perhaps pulling it all together at once. Anyway, more to come. And then lastly, and I don't recall if I shared this at the last meeting or not, so bear with me if I'm repeating. But DWR is developing some guidance documents that will be helpful, I think, for the GSAs moving forward. So as I understand it, they're developing guidance documents for annual reports, which will be interesting because I've had quite a few of those thus far. So that'll be interesting. They're working on drinking water mitigation as well as updates on guidance for how to update the GSPs. The critically overdrafted subbasins will be due here in the not too near future. too distant future. And so they're giving guidance on how to update those and then how to address interconnected surface water. So all of those things will be interesting when they come up from talk about those. That's all I had. And it lasted long enough for Perry to get there, so it's good.
I was still long enough to get Perry here.
Yep.
Perry, how are you?
I'm well, Michael. Good to see you.
Okay, so go back to item number 8, if that's okay with everybody. We have an informational presentation from the Valley Water Collaborative regarding implementation of the nitrate control program in Turlock Subbasin and discussing collaboration. So Perry's here from the collaborative. You might remember him from the irrigated lands program. Seems like a lifetime ago now, Perry.
It was a lifetime position, almost 20 years.
Taking difficult issues and having us be successful. So let me hand it to you, Perry, and we'll go from there.
Great, thanks. And I'm going to turn my clock on so I keep it at about 20 minutes or so. That includes questions. All right. Well, thanks for having me speak today. And I've got a presentation.
Same thing. Give me just 1 second. We have a few of those things that are off our view, but as you can always.
Oh, you didn't need to record that. So. So Michael, it was 2003 when you and I first met.
Okay.
20 years.
That was a long time.
It is.
I was like in 5th grade then, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we were all in 5th grade.
To ask me to advance.
Okay, good.
Or I can bring this over there to you, but you've seen.
No, I'll just say next. All right, next slide. So just briefly, I want to tell you that our consulting engineer Valley Water hires GEI consulting engineers and Ludor Scalmanini, two probably very familiar firms to you all, to do our technical work. On the next slide, we are made up, we are a nonprofit 501c3 that was formed now going on about 3 years ago. Next slide. I think it's. Yeah, we're a nonprofit that was formed 3 years ago to represent dischargers, permit holders with the Regional Water Board in the nitrate control program. And our mission is to implement the programs that are in the nitrate control program. Two main goals are this replacement drinking water for residences, and then for the dischargers, protecting and enhancing the quality of groundwater used as drinking water. And that's in the permit parlance, we are causing and contributing to nitrate degradation of the groundwater. At this time, we were able to negotiate with the regional board a 30-year extension to meeting the drinking water standard in the Central Valley in exchange for providing free well testing and replacement water for anyone that's impacted by nitrate in their groundwater. So next slide. We created this nonprofit made up of the dischargers. Our board is composed of 3 representatives from irrigated ag, 3 food processor wineries, two from the dairy industry, 1 from poultry, 3 cities. We have all the cities, but the city we're sitting in that's participating in the program. You can see them listed here. The nitrate control program had 2 options. You could prove that you're not causing or contributing to groundwater contamination, or if you couldn't do that, you could join a management zone. So there are 6 priority groundwater basins in the Central Valley. Modesto, Turlock being 2 of them. Chowchilla, Kings, Kauai, and Tule are the other 4 that are priority 1 management zones. So next slide. So we, out of the chute, if you will, our first plan that we had to submit to the regional board almost 2.5 years ago, it's been over 2.5 years ago, was called the Emergency Drinking Water, Interim Drinking Water Program. So that was the first step of the planning and implementation that we had to do as an organization. And then I'll talk about the other plan that was just submitted here in September that is outlining the long-term solutions. So we started out offering free well testing. Next slide. And as part of the first plan, the preliminary management zone proposal, our consultants had to go out and identify existing data, all the wells that were outside of a public water system in the 2 groundwater basins, Modesto and Turlock. They identified a little over 4,000 wells initially 3.5 years ago. And in this more recent report, they did a little bit more fine tuning of that estimate and came up with 3,500 wells that are between 7.5 and above. So the standard is 10. But the regional board has us identifying those that are in the potential to exceed the standard in possibly in the near future. The population of those residents, again, outside of public water system, if you're in one of those cities, you're fine. You don't have, you should have safe water, or you have to have safe water. The state shuts you down. The population of those rural residences is about 81,000. So next slide. So far in our program, we started 2 years ago in May. We have, and I can almost read that from here, 448 residences are receiving bottled water. So we have had a total of over 1,000 applicants. Any of those actually that didn't qualify were in cities and they were already getting safe water, but I guess they didn't like their water. We sent over almost 600 of those wells once we verified their location into our lab to have geoanalytical based in Turlock to do the well testing of these residents. And then 71% of those were over the MCL, which is a 448. 7% were in between 7.5 and 10. And what we do with those that are in that lower range is we have to resample them every year for 3 years until they are approved, until they show that they're not going to exceed 10. And then we had 19% or 120 wells that were below the 7.5. Next slide. So this is a mapping system database that we developed based out of a database that the city of Ceres had. We've modified it, and you can see on the left, those are the 2 groundwater basins. The bottom of the map is the Merced River. The top of the map is Stanislaus River. So you can see the heat map in the background, the contouring of the nitrate areas, pretty much covered by the applicants. On the right-hand side is the recipients of water. So pretty good distribution throughout the area where we knew there was going to be high nitrates. And by the way, any of this data, if you're interested in a more granular look at that, we're more than happy to provide you guys this information. Anyway, this gives you a really good feel for how many applicants we've gotten, some outside of the region, some in the cities, almost none in the green area, which is the border of that green area. You see it's about the Oakdale Waterford Highway over on the east side of the region. Okay, next slide. So about a year into our program, the State Water Board SAFER program came to the management zones and said, look, we think you're doing a good job. We'd like to provide you some funding to expand your sampling and analysis to other contaminants in groundwater other than nitrate. And those you can see on that lower right-hand side of replacement water, arsenic. Let's see, that was the example. We do arsenic, 1,2,3 TCP, DBCP, EDB, uranium, and they pay for the full cost of that sampling. We've got a $5.5 million grant with them. The work began in March 2022. And, excuse me, we have found over half of the wells that we sampled, not all of the wells, because we didn't start until year 2. Over half of the wells are contaminated with uranium. Arsenic is the second most common contaminant, but uranium by far is the highest contaminant that's found above the drinking water standard. So we have a cost share arrangement with State Water Board where they pay 100% of this additional contaminant testing, and it's about $400 a well that they're paying to do these other contaminants. And then we cover the nitrate testing, and then they're paying half of our outreach cost, and then the administration of the other contaminants, they're covering that cost, and then we have some other splits for the overall administration. So it's worked out pretty well. It was a surprise when they came to us because 5 years ago, there's no way the management zones are going to touch safer water. There were actually state board members that said that, and we were quite pleased to have them working with us now. And we've received back reimbursements, probably close to $1 million in the 2 years already. Takes a long time to get the funding, the reimbursement, but they are so far been keeping up with their bills. Okay, next slide. So here's the results you can see of those other contaminants. And we provide bottled water. We're just starting to look at POU, point of use, point of entry installations. We have one carbon filter that was put into a residence that had 1,2,3 TCP, because that's the only treatment you can use for that contaminant. And then the point of use installations have been lagging because we ran into a little bit of a barrier for installing these. And if anybody's familiar with POU, you know they can be contaminated with bacteria. So what we did initially when we started the testing is started testing for coliform and E. coli in the water test. And just about every well we tested had either one of those contaminants. And so when you have those of you that know, and I know Christy does, when a well tested positive for those contaminants, you have to notify the homeowner within 48 hours in person on the phone. You can't text them, you can't email. We went about 2 weeks into that and said, time out, we're not going to do this, because we had a lot of our well tests come in on Fridays. So our staff was working Saturdays and Sundays calling people. And then we went and looked into what do you have to do to sanitize the well? Well, you dump chlorine in it or you do some sort of treatment. And we talked to a couple of vendors to get estimates, and they advised us, you don't want to go there, because if you do decontaminate a well, it could be fixed for a week or a month or a year, and it's going to come back, because contamination typically, a poor sealing of the well. Anyway, the long story short is we have paused our POU installations until we figure out what we're going to do with this bacteria contamination. And it's looking like we'll be using, I'm drawing a blank now, it's a UV light treatment before the water gets into you. However, the state board doesn't approve any of the systems yet for small systems. So we're in a little bit of a quandary of what to do about that. Anyway, we're providing bottled water for anybody that has exceedances of any of these contaminants. Okay, next slide. And I'll come back to the reason why I went so long on that. All right, so now I described the priority 1 basins that are in the Central Valley. The regional board didn't notify all the priority 2 basins immediately, because it was a big undertaking for the regional board to even put the program in place. So they are now preparing the end of this year to send out notifications, notice to comply, to all the dischargers that are in the priority 2 basins, which essentially is all of the rest of the Central Valley. There's a few areas in Sac Valley that are not even prioritized. but we are planning, and we've talked to some of the adjacent basins to Valley Water, so Turlock. And we've got commitments 100% from the Merced Basin, which you see on the map on the right-hand side, and the Delta Mendota Basin. East San Joaquin, which extends from the Stanislaus to Stockton, is considering it, and there's a good chance that they are going to be joining Valley Water. And the main reason to sell for this is economies of scale. We don't need more organizations. We've got plenty of organizations with administration. So what we are doing is trying to create an entity, a vehicle for the dischargers to participate in and try to minimize the cost for especially the long-term solutions. Okay, next slide. Which leads me to the long-term planning. So in September, go to the next slide. In September, we had to develop and submit a management zone implementation plan. This is the long-term plan for what are we going to do about the drinking water problem that's caused by nitrate. And this bubble chart you can see starts when we got our notice to comply in 2020. In March 2021, we turned in the preliminary plan. Then the early action plan was approved on May 8th. Then we submitted the final plan of that preliminary in August 22. And then in February 28, 23, they approved those management zone plans. But where you see the screen on the right-hand side is blocking, the long-term plan was submitted on September 5. 3 goals in that plan that we had to give great detail on. That this is like a 400 or 500 page plan. But the first goal is to ensure, as it was in the first, ensure safe drinking water, reduce the nitrate loading, and then restore the groundwater over the long term. So that goal number 2 is the side of the discharger. So each of those that are participating in a management zone that get the 30-year extension, they have to develop a plan, submit it for their industry sector that says, this is how we are going to reduce our nitrate loading to groundwater. So Irrigated Lands Program has their nitrate reporting. The dairy industry is in the middle of negotiating a new order. Cities and with their wastewater treatment plants and wineries and other food processors already have permits, but they have to develop plans of how are we going to slow down and eliminate over time, over this 35 years, causing or contributing to nitrate contamination. So next slide. So there's a lot of work that's going to go into that. I'm going to jump to I'll focus on the bottom bullet point, which is because the area is so large, we identified and were approved by the regional board what we call initial focus areas. We can't do the whole management zone area at once. It's too large of an area. Go to the next slide. So what we did with these early here's more detail on the nitrate reduction program and explains, and I'm going to leave this with you, those who are interested in reading more, but this is what I just explained. These industry sectors create an approach that they are going to use, especially irrigated ag and dairy, of how they're going to reduce their discharges. And they have goals, milestones, and such. So over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have to show progress. Or the regional water board could say, we're going to stop this program. You're not doing your job. You're not living up to your milestones and your promises that you made in this plan. And we almost know 100% this order is going to be challenged up to the state water board. I don't know how it would not be. So that's another thing that's kind of hanging over our heads. All right, next slide. So we also are going to be developing a surveillance and monitoring program to track long-term water quality. We're going to use, as part of that, the Irrigated Lands Trend Monitoring Network. We have to turn in annual progress reports. We have to show that we're coordinating our activities with other entities. And then the restoration program is a long-term goal, because restoring our groundwater aquifers is not an easy undertaking. And we're hoping you get all the recharge ponds you could ever imagine building in your GSA, because that will really help out the dilution of the nitrate in groundwater. There's really no practical way to resolve the nitrates in groundwater. Okay, next slide. So here's the timeline. Again, it's something you can study if you're interested later. We turned in our plan on the far left. There's going to be a completeness review in the next 30 to 60 days. And then once that's done in November, there's going to be a formal comment period along with a regional board workshop. And then there'll be a public hearing in early 2024 at the regional board as well. So next slide. So the initial focus areas we've identified for the next slide based on a couple of factors. Where's the disadvantaged community? Where's the highest density of domestic wells with nitrate exceedances? And what we did is plotted out 3 in the Modesto Basin and 5 in the Turlock Basin. You can see them listed here. And what we're going to be doing, and one of the things that I've got a lot of homework to do in the next year is find out where might be areas for consolidation. Where are wells near drinking water systems, where the drinking water system has the capability to take on new users or has the willingness, and also finding out if people that have contaminated wells would be willing to be consolidated. So that's one of the highest priorities for the state. Now, whether practically that's going to be what our go-to approach is, I believe personally that we're going to be doing a lot of point of use installations and systems that help clean water at the wellhead. Because consolidation, as you can imagine, is so expensive. It's not really practical once you get over a mile away from a public water system, but we have to go through the process. Go ahead to the next slide. We have to go through the process of contacting the collaborators, community organizations. We need to engage the residences that are receiving water now, and that may be impacted, identify where there might be projects in the works already or where there may be funding. We collectively, the management zones, have hired lobbyists in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. to start prowling for money, I call it, trying to find places in the next 5 years that we can get substantial funding for these, what will likely be enormous projects. And then once we identify projects, try to prioritize their needs with the collaborators, and then pursue this funding to hopefully come up with solutions. Okay, next slide. So again, just the agencies, the state, county, and community organizations. Next slide. And then the engagement strategy. And I'm bumping on 20 minutes, but this essentially outlines a way that we're going to do outreach. The initial focus areas, working with communities, figuring out where the studies are, where the funding is, both in the initial focus areas and the other management zone areas. So we're not going to be ignoring the other areas, but where the initial focus areas are where we will start in the next 12 to 24 months. Okay, next slide. And you can just flash through these. These are just blow-ups of what those actual functions are. And you can keep going through until you get to my ask. So I'm on it. And we are already working on collaboration. Here's the timeline. We had a workshop last week, and we'll continue having these outreach meetings. And my ask for the GSA, you're all GSAs. I've made this presentation in the Modesto GSAs is we've got a state agency, Regional Water Board, asking us, how are you going to collaborate with the GSAs? You probably are hearing from from your regulatory agency, DWR, how are you going to collaborate with the management zones? Our answer to them so far has been, we don't know. We just barely got our plans written. How can we figure out what we're going to do? We're spending, 6 figures to do these plans, hire consultants. So I'm starting the process of figuring out, what are we going to do? What would be a good way for you to tell Department of Water Resources, we're fine, we're collaborating, and us to say to the regional board, we're fine, we're collaborating. And my personal goal partly is on the last one. I came, as you heard me exchanging my history here, 20 years in irrigated agriculture. I think one of the first things that we need to do, if we haven't done it already, is go to the farmers and say, look, no duplication of effort here. These are separate programs. We are not trying to double dip on you. We're doing the best we can to implement these programs. I can't even count the number of grower meetings I went to where when we told them about the plan to do this, they said, get the GSAs to do it. Why are you forming another organization? You got the GSAs, they can do it. And I don't even think I need to ask you. You guys want to do this? Because I know the answer. It's just no way. So anyway, the point being is sometime next year, let's figure out a way to either do an MOU, a letter of agreement, or something that when we get asked, we hold up this document. Yeah, we're working with the GSAs in our area. And then when it comes down to us really doing things, spending money, let's see where we can share costs. Let's just do the best we can to not spend any more money than we already are. Sorry to be frank, but that's really what it comes down to. So I think that's my last slide. And that hits me on 20 minutes and 16 seconds. So any questions?
Great presentation. I'm glad you were heading that up. Another thing, and work together because it's very, you don't see groundwater levels, impacts on drinking water wells, water quality. It's kind of part of what we do too. We just don't really have the expertise in the area you have. So there's opportunities to collaborate, and I think we'll work through and our attorneys, whatever whatever instrument needs to be to show we are working together, because it's in both our interests, both the GSA and the collaborative, to show that the state regulators worked on this. We have a program, we have solutions, and leave us alone.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing fine. And I've already been at one of your meetings, your outreach meetings, and over time, we're going to be doing a lot of those. If we can share venues or share platforms, let's do that where we can. So as you all know, it's so hard to get the public participation in this. The regulators think they ought to be swarming in to participate, and it's just not happening. So far, we haven't seen it anyway, maybe coming in the future. But anything that we can do to help each other out, I think, is appropriate. And I'm going to be starting to talk to Turlock, your representative there, Dan. Let's see what I had his name written down. That's the applicant, but for the city of Turlock, we're still going to collaborate with Turlock. They can do pathway. That's fine. I mean, whatever we tell all of our members, if you can find a business model to get you out of this, go for it, because this is the easiest, cost-effective way to do it at this time. So we don't, certainly don't hold any grudges or otherwise for them taking that path. They're all going to be hard.
Any questions for Perry or follow-up?
Just a couple of things, and this is just putting it on the radar screen so we can hash it out later. From ETS GSA's perspective, one of the key benefits of collaboration is, as you mentioned, plowing for money. There's an ever increasing focus on two things. One is collaboration and multiple benefits, and the other is disadvantaged communities. Right. I think that collaboration can potentially have a lot of benefits beyond just being able to keep the DWR and the regional board off our backs. And then specifically with respect to grants, I think I mentioned to you that we put in for from the Office of Planning and Research for a grant for development of a regional domestic well mitigation program. We should hear back in November if we've gotten that. If we do get the grant, I think that we should talk about collaborating around that work. Second thing is, we did receive a block grant for a multi-benefit land repurposing program. Some of the land repurposing strategies would benefit both water quality and water quantity, such as cover cropping, for example, or irrigation efficiencies. So I think there's a room there for collaboration, perhaps in the near term, in a way that you can actually show something that says, oh, we're collaborating already. Sure. I think that makes a lot of technical sense as well. And then finally, I think you're aware, and I just learned last week that the coalitions were going after conservation innovation grants from NRCS. And so we are talking to the coalitions about potentially participating in those grants, to the on-farm grants, with respect to evaluating the water quality and quantity benefits of different irrigation strategies. It's all happening very quickly. I only just learned about this. It's due at the end of the month. We may wish to consider, a letter of support for them, but it's unclear at this point if we're even going to be invited to participate with them. But these are conversations that I think are worth having. And with respect to the SIG grants, if we don't get invited to participate, maybe we'll go out for it ourselves next year and do it together with Valley Water Collaborative so that we can get some momentum going for additional water quality and quantity funding coming in to help us do our jobs.
Yeah, and as you all know, the ideal and this is what our goal is with our lobby, especially in DC, we want a line item in somebody's bill that isn't a grant, it isn't an RFP. It's a line item for a region, for a purpose, and it's there for a period of time, not a competitive grant. I mean, that's the gold standard, of course, but we have all the things that they love to hear, that we have a water shortage. We're trying to be more efficient. We have a lot of water efficiency we've done already, but we're not there yet. We have disadvantaged communities with needs, and we're organizing. We have plans, and we have a structure to implement them. So I think even if these immediate term don't work, we're not going to give up for years on this, because I didn't even mention they have the SALT program that's being done by CV Salts. You're talking about a huge infrastructure challenges managing salts, and in 10 years they're going to have a plan done. They're spending $10 million to do this plan for the Central Valley, paid for by the dischargers. That's going to have a huge need for the Central Valley. So this is not short-term thinking at all. Michael and I will probably sitting in our retirement chairs before that hits the road, but it's going to be, it's just something that's, it's going to need a lot of attention for a long period of time. And I think they're all good projects and approaches to try to come up with solutions.
Anything else for Perry? Very helpful, Perry. I really appreciate you coming in, keeping us informed. We appreciate the work you're doing so far. And again, as we can hope to collaborate in the future and work together on some stuff. That sounds great.
So on my first point there, an MOU, we've got a really good attorney, some of you know, Tess Dunham, she's working with the GSAs in the South in the management zones. And if you are open to look at something early next year, I'd like to get her working on or modifying something that's being used somewhere else already with the GSA to start considering.
Sure. I mean, if obviously there's something out there, send it around, and obviously we'll get our legal folks to take a look and get the sentiment of the group, because that's something we want to do. And again, it's always good to have something to work off. Right? What is it like? What are we entering into? And what's the comfort level of everybody to do that?
Yeah, and there's kind of a document floating. I sent it to Debbie that more or less says, let's start doing a plan. I mean, it's a quite long lawyerly written piece that doesn't have a commitment, but says, let's start figuring out what that is. And I'm going to go to her and say, an MOU, let's do a simple MOU so we have something that we can, when push comes to shove, we can start showing around.
I think for me, it'll be interesting to see how DWR rates our GSP. Obviously, they haven't given us a thumbs up.
Yeah.
And
right. Oh, yeah.
They may have actually may spur us into action sooner rather than later. I don't know. But
yeah.
It will be interesting. I know in other regions, the protection of drinking water has kind of risen to the top as a concern. And whether that's the case here, I don't know yet. We'll see.
Okay.
See what happens.
You all know how to get in touch with me. All right. Well, thanks for the time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
See you next time.
Item 8. It's some on item number 9, but these Turlock folks, we didn't give you a chance to, if you had anything, just general Sigma related updates to share with the group.
Yeah, we've got a couple of updates. I'll keep it brief. We are angling to have a workshop probably on November 14th, the 13th or the 14th for our Proposition 218 assessment. So we're going to have both or we're proposing to have both a land-based assessment as well as volume-based extraction fees, which will be implemented a little bit later. So we're looking at having a public workshop on in November, and then adopting our engineer's report and sending out ballots in December. Concurrent with that, we expect to execute our grant agreement for the MLRP program later this month. We had a meeting with the state. It's what they call a statewide support entity, which is like a best practice support group last month, and that was very helpful. And so we're starting to talk to folks more specifically about exactly how to engage once we get our grant signed. And then we're moving forward with our pilot program for a grower portal, and with interviews with them and gathering information so that we can develop a full-scale portal in time for the next irrigation season, and then adopting it to support our feed program in 2015. And that's probably enough. So
Wonderful. Good.
So lots of activity.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff happening, Mike. So good job, you and Sarah. Thanks for that. Any other updates from anybody? Sigma related, groundwater related? Heading into winter, so the pumping's probably slowing down a little bit now, right? We're watering the lawns a little bit less.
Well, slowing down because we might lose a well, but that's not the slowdown that you're looking for.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
It's a shame, but we're here from Ceres. No, Turlock, right? Because the drinking water plant's supposed to come on towards the end of this year, so that'll be exciting for them, and obviously a benefit to the subbasin. So looking forward to hearing more about that. Okay, here are no other updates. Our next meeting of our regular joint technical advisory committee is Tuesday, November 14th at 2 p.m. Oh, is that going to clash with your 18 workshop or?
We're having ours in the morning.
Okay.
So I think we anticipated that we would have an all day of GSA issues.
Yeah, amazing. That Thursday evening is the West Turlock GSA board meeting too. So there's a single week coming up. Okay, so with that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn from the West Turlock Subbasin GSA.
so moved.
Second.
Michael? I'm trying to second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are adjourned.
And for the East Turlock, can I get a motion to adjourn? Lacey, Dennis, thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. We're adjourned.